Okay, so recently NASA sent across unmanned spaceship to an asteroid because they thought this asteroid is potentially going to come and crash into Earth, and sort of the asteroid is big enough to level a whole city apparently, and the aircraft went and crashed into the asteroid, and their idea is it sort of changes trajectory. Uh, so do you think this is actually going to work or it's actually worked? Because they have a press conference on 11th October to tell us if it's going to work or not. The question is, do you think this Armageddon style thing actually will work, or is it true, or is it just a marketing hype?
If they're going to hold a press conference, I assume it's going to work to some level. There has to be some success part to it. But yeah, I think there are a few questions here. If it's a really big asteroid, then it really doesn't matter. It's like you try and kick a stone, and if the stone is fast enough or big enough, it's not going to change trajectory. But um, it's useful for potentially small asteroids, because the larger the asteroid, we either need a really big explosive or something to really change the momentum of this incoming object. But it is a nice way to, I mean, I don't know how many other ways there are to change. If we do have an asteroid coming towards Earth, which I don't think we have too much control over, or we do something to change the course of the asteroid. So yeah, in that sense, it is an idea that I think we've seen enough cartoons about, and but from a scientific perspective also, there is definitely the possibility that it could work. And like Mani said, it all depends on how big the asteroid versus how big you want to push it. But yeah, if nothing else, this would be a proof of concept.
But Bharat raised an important point. It's what really matters is even more than the size. It's the momentum or the energy associated with the asteroid. And if your aim is to just deflect it off a path where it will not collide with Earth anymore, perhaps based on where it is, you don't need to change much in its direction to cause a big change with respect to where it would be when it arrives in the vicinity of Earth. So yeah, the key parameters would be the momentum and energy and how much change you want to cause to its momentum and energy. But well, I do not know more about it. So even if it's absolute momentum or energy is large, the change you want to cause is really tiny. Perhaps it's a viable idea.
Welcome everyone to Steam Theater episode 4. We have some fabulous guests this time, and I'm going to introduce them shortly. This is Bharat and Mani with us today here, and they are from IIT Madras, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Before that, a short, question on how you're going to introduce. So Bharat and Mani, you have to introduce yourselves. Say Bharat, you go first, alphabetical order, then Mani. You have to introduce yourself like you're introducing yourself to a 6th or 7th standard school student, and you have to explain what you do to a school child so that they understand what exactly you do. You have to simplify whatever you do, and then you can give me your titles and what you do after that. Yeah, but first try to explain it to a school student.
Okay. Yeah. So I go first. Yeah. So I guess hey everyone, I'm Bharat. To put it simply, I'm a teacher. I work at IIT Madras, and inside IIT Madras, I'm in the aerospace department. So I guess my job is a couple of different aspects. One is we have regular classes, so we go and teach students. Then there is the second part where we try to try and experiment with whatever we know to find new things or maybe explore new ideas. So in that aspect, what I do a lot of is I try to work with helicopters and just see if we can make them faster, safer, if they can fly farther, can carry more people, etc. So most of my work is with helicopters. We also work a little bit on these drones, which you've seen a lot of, quadrotors, hexarotors, and we keep experimenting on that front as well. That's really all it is. Maybe another small portion of my job is we also work with other organizations, national labs, companies, and try to help them solve their problems. Right. So yeah, I guess that's what I do. And my official title is I'm an assistant professor at Department of Aerospace Engineering at IIT Madras.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be in this podcast. I am Mani. I do something quite similar to what Bharat does, in the sense that I teach. We also do some research, try to discover new ideas or build new things in the broad field of aerospace engineering, right? And building an airplane takes expertise or involves several components, and different components require different kind of ideas and different thought processes that go into it, and we also have to talk to each other. So Bharat and I are like, he works on, let's say, the overall design. I may be working just on, can the blades of the helicopter do a little better in terms of how much lift force they can generate. So in that sense, I do what's called fluid mechanics, to think about how fluid or air or water moves around different bodies, like the blades of a helicopter or the wings of an aircraft, or you could say the fan running in your room. Can you think about, can these blades be designed better so that we have better breeze? Or why 3 blades? Why not 4 blades? These are kind of questions we think about, along with teaching 17 to 25-year-old students on how basically fluid principle, how a fluid flows. Be it so we look at, funnily enough, we look at water and air, treat them in a similar manner. They are very different fluids, but as far as if you think about it as all fluid mechanics, very similar principles govern how they move around. And so hopefully understanding how they move around will help us ultimately designing big systems like aircraft, drones, and helicopters.
Basically, you both are into, actively, apart from teaching, you're into research. Our question is basically for students in school, especially in, say, tier 2, tier 3 cities where we go to work a lot. The research mindset is not particularly there. It's more of rote learning at the moment. I mean, we can keep talking about the systematic changes. That's not, something not in our hands immediately. I would like to address like how to make students on their own, if we are going out and talking to them, or if you go out and talking to students in schools, especially in cities where it's not equal opportunity that's given in the big cities where all students are exposed to big science fairs, conventions, different activities that sort of hone a research mindset. How do we sort of tell them or prepare them for a research mindset in these schools and cities?
Yeah, maybe I'll just start and Mani, you can.
Yes.
Yeah, it's actually an excellent question, and I'll have to, there are a lot of layers that I probably have to think about, but immediately something comes to mind. So I'll maybe just start off with that. You're right, because we want people, it's not just, do you know the multiplication tables? Do you know this particular thing that will get you, 10th standard or whatever it is? Research, I think, is just a really fancy name for being curious, right? So you can call it research, you can wrap it up in a big, nice, whatever it is. But in reality, it's just the fact that we've not lost that, hey, what happens if we do this, right? Or why does this work the way it is? And for the most part, we don't know the answer, right? And I'll probably give you an anecdote that I heard when I was graduating from IIT, right? My BTech. So we were at the convocation. The director is giving a speech. He made a lot of funny comments, but one comment sort of stuck, and he said, "Well, we have a lot of parents here who may not be aware of all the programs we have at IIT. So I'll probably just go through it a little bit." And he started off by saying, people come, they take JEE, they hang out with us, then they learn 4 years, and when they come to a stage where they think they know everything there is in the world, that's when we give them a bachelor's degree, right? And then if they decide, well, maybe let me get a little bit more curious and then start doing research, and then there comes a point when they realize that, oh no, I actually know nothing at all, that's when we give them a master's degree, right? And if they decide to stick a little further and poke a little bit more, they realize, well, not only do I know nothing, even my advisor doesn't know anything. That's when we give them a PhD. Okay, so that's sort of stuck. I mean, I think that sort of captures why people do research. I think in terms of addressing tier 2, tier 3 cities, I think, what spaces like PCL does, where you go and show people how things work. It doesn't have to be connected to what they're doing at school. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But you just show them, hey, here is a cool concept. Do you want to try it out, right? Since we're talking aerospace, you make a paper plane and show them, you show them 2-3 ways and say, hey, this one goes farther. Why does this go farther? Or you've seen those things where there's a fountain coming up, you place a ball and the ball just keeps rotating, but really doesn't fall off, right? So it looks like it's magic. And asking them to explain things like that. One way, I suppose, I don't know if this is how feasible things are, but just getting them curious, showing them whatever, however big or small it is, letting them play with it and telling them it's okay that you don't know, as long as you're always curious, is a good message to send. Yeah.
No, not a very different angle. Curiosity is a key word. And so, in fact, I think, keeping that curiosity trait going is the key challenge. And research will take care of itself. Opportunities will present themselves in appropriate moments. You wouldn't know what exactly you will. People can plan for 10 years later, 20 years later. It doesn't work out that way. But as long as you remain curious and have patience, and you're not really, impatient to achieve something immediately, do something major. As a master student who came by recently, somehow he said, hey, let's get going with this activity. And he said, no, sir, overnight, I have been thinking that overnight I will be cracking something. And research does not really work that way. So it takes effort, but at the same time, the most important point is curiosity. And like Bharat says, as you move along, you go from an undergraduate to a master's to a PhD to a postdoc, you realize you know lesser and lesser. That's one lesson you learn. But you also realize there are a lot of questions that you can think about. And there is no dearth of questions for people. It is really no competition. You realize that there are way more issues to address than the number of people or number of scientists that are out there. So in that sense, there is no need to be, insecure about opportunities. Opportunities will present themselves. The attitude is right. Now, with respect to tier 2, tier 3 cities and the school children there, I think the key is with the teachers and the parents. Not too much. I would say not. It's not even so critical for the entire system to be, ideal and so on. Sometimes individual teachers influence you to take, continue to be engaged or very enthusiastic about research or curiosity. And somewhere along the line, every school has one or two of those teachers. It's not to say academics is not important. Of course, it is important, and there is a reason why there are curriculums. If there is a CBSE board, they have a set of. It's all well thought out. But somewhere along the line, the students may not appreciate it. And they will see it, it's all just everyday mundane stuff. They're just making us do things repetitively. Classic example is the machine shop during my college. First year of workshop during my college, I saw no point in doing it. So I would be impatient at 2 o'clock or 2:30, the machine shop class starts. It goes on till 4:30. I would be impatient for what would be the tiffin that I get in the hostel and when can I get onto the soccer ground. But then come PhD, I was laughing at myself as to having missed the opportunity of learning more during the machine shop classes. So somewhere I felt that if somebody had told me, don't worry about how well you are doing, and I was also quite bad at machine shop. Engineering drawing is another example. I was quite poor in these. And there is this tendency that students think if you're let's say, not naturally able in something, or you see others doing something much better than you kind of start to look at it as something that you don't like, which is not really right. And that's where somewhere teachers have to step in to keep you do it to the best of your ability. And there is a larger purpose for many of these things. And curiosity, keep your curiosity feeling going. There are too many really good students I know, even from my school days or college days, who have just not really followed in the research direction simply because they got disillusioned. And there wasn't somebody, the right guide to tell them, hey, there are remarkable abilities in you. It's just that it may not be right in the form of doing well in a CBSE exam. So that's something that's critical. Second, with respect to curiosity, why I mentioned parents also is this happens on an everyday basis. Like Bharat came up with this anecdote. I remember an anecdote of a friend's daughter. I'd gone with my friend's daughter to a Decathlon shop in France. We had got this tennis racket for her. And she's like, as soon as she got it, she was excited about it, continuously fiddling with the guts or the net or the guts of the racket. And then her father and myself were like, don't do that. It would damage the racket. She's like, why? Like continuously touching the racket guts is not good for the guts. And she's like, we bought this to play tennis. The ball is going to be coming and touching the guts all the time. So I don't, it doesn't make sense. Now you have to now take a call on whether you're just going to say follow what I'm saying, or she actually raised an interest. It was a difficult question, frankly. Then you have to start talking about what kind of touch or what kind of touch to the guts is actually going to damage it. Why the ball repeatedly hitting in some manner, it's not really so detrimental to the racket and so on. So that has to be encouraged. And now I'm experiencing the same at my home. I have a 7-year-old son. He has questions about everything, why everything is in some way. This fan is probably a question that came up recently, why he 3 blades and so on. So that does not need an extraordinary science fest to happen. Yeah, I agreed. The cities have a lot more opportunities going for the students, but for the tier 2, tier 3, they need not try and replicate everything that happens in cities. If they can have the right guides, probably in the form of parents or some individual teachers, then it probably makes a little more sense for teachers to have some of these thought processes going in schools. That could really have a big impact.
Yeah, I have one thing to add on. So we spoke about parents, teachers, etc. In fact, tier 2 and tier 3 cities have an advantage in terms of possessing knowledge that we forget when we come to tier 1. Right? There's a cultural knowledge that is built. There is know-hows that are built, maybe not explained in the scientific way that we expect it to be explained today, but that doesn't make them any less rigorous or in fact any less inferior. In fact, we have technologies that are superior, which are, we say, oh, this is relegated to the villages and old people know this. We just have not bothered, documenting. To give you a simple example, I think Mani and I can both attest to this. So the floors in IIT quarters used to be made out of this red oxide, right? And these are predominantly South Indian architecture for houses, where the floor has very distinct dark maroon color, and it's a specific way of doing it. And the reason it's done is to keep it retains, it keeps it cool, right? Because the temperature is quite high. You want the floor to be as cool as possible. But today, that technology doesn't exist. You can't get red oxide floors done. I mean, you can get a red color floor done, okay, or someone who puts in some paste. But if you walk on it, then it will stick to all your, clothes and etc. So we now have these marble tiles. I'm not complaining, but I'm just, these tiles are great. But here is an example which I am sure you can go. We just don't know where to look for this, right? You ask anyone in the city, oh no, we don't have this. But somewhere out there in some village, tier 1, tier 2, tier 2, tier 3, this technology still exists, right? And so sometimes research, there is a huge part of it which is preservation. And it's not always like, oh, we need to do the next big thing. Maybe we had things that were great, which we just have not bothered making sure we retain. So that's just something else I want to see. We always don't have to say tier 1 is always knows more. Not really the case in many things. So, and teachers, parents, local communities actually play a big part in fostering curiosity and maintaining what they know and actually propagating it back up to tier 1. So yeah, just wanted to add that point.
What do you think would be the best way to prepare for IIT, and do you think it's worth getting into? for the students who ask the question.
Mani, you go first.
With respect to what is the best way for preparing, I wrote this entrance exam around more than 20 years ago. A lot of things have changed. So the only thing I can say is do not spend too much time preparing for it. I see there are children who are beginning preparation for JEE from 6th standard, 5th standard, or sometimes even smaller classes. I think that is not worth it because it comes at the expense of losing out on several other things that one needs to be doing, not just as a child, as an adult, as everyone should be doing. So in terms of the best way, I don't know the right answer because the system itself has changed quite a bit. But I would like to believe 2 years of hard work and perseverance, if you are interested, should do the job. But the basic question is, are you interested in getting an engineering education from IITs? So that should be the driving point. It should not be that you go and prepare because everybody is telling you go and study in an IIT. So because if the basic interest is there, putting in the hard work that is necessary would come naturally because that's what it takes. And that shouldn't be done for, I spent a couple of years preparing for the entrance exams. I don't think it should be too much more than that. There are people who are capable of probably for preparing for lesser time. That's perfectly fine. But surely not something like, hey, for the last 8 years, I've been thinking about how to get into an IIT. With respect to your second question, is it worth getting into? Yes, IITs are excellent places for education, but they are not the only places for undergraduate education. As I told you earlier in this episode, IITs have started spending a lot of time and effort in research as well. So it's not just for undergraduate education. So IITs are worth getting into. That's my answer, because excellent ecosystem and peer network or peer population exists there. You have good teachers as well. But there are several other places where you can get very good engineering education as well. And as I said, it has to be driven by interest. I've had undergraduate students, first semester, first class, they talk about, hey, how do I get to go and talk to Mark Zuckerberg? If that's where your interest is, you have no reason to be landing up here in the first place. So, yeah, Bharat may add on.
Yeah, you
No,
can
I
go on. But
largely agree with Mani on this. I think the best way to get into IIT if you want to is to play more. I think 2 years is sufficient. And I'm not saying this because that's what I did or that's what. It's generally an exam that's based on your 11th and 12th, right? That's generally how it goes. If I'm looking at this from a very subjective, it is on your 11th and 12th curriculum. I don't understand why you would spend 10th standard learning 11th standard, 9th standard learning 10th standard, then the first standard kid is learning 3rd standard. In all of this, you lose what it means to be a kid. An entire piece of childhood is missing. That has actually big ramifications later on, because we find people who do get into IIT, and then they've lost the drive, right? They've achieved whatever they wanted to achieve. They've gotten into IIT. Now it doesn't matter. But unfortunately, this is only the beginning. It is the beginning of your undergraduate education. That's really it. At the end of it, you're going to get something that tells you you're an engineer. And I don't think people should lose focus of that. I mean, it's again, I agree with Mani. It's a great place to be. Yeah, it's worth getting into. But it's not the end all be all as people seem to put it, because people forcing kids to read for 8-10 years, I don't know what it does. I really don't know what it does. You don't have the mental capacity to stay that focused for so long, at least not the general population. Of course, there could be outliers. Yeah, and if and you not getting in doesn't actually say much. It is you did not do well on one exam. Okay, right? Are we all excellent at every exam we take? I don't think so. You can ask me to take IIT again, and I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I'll get it. Right?
No, I'll be honest with you. I won't get
it. It doesn't change how I look at myself. I know what I'm capable of. There's a day, yeah, okay, that day I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out, right? And that's okay. I think the problem is when people you studying in, getting in, that's actually the happy story, right? That's fine. But unfortunately, that's also the smallest fraction of the people who attempt it. That's just how the exam is designed. We have a finite number of seats allotted to IITs, and if the number of people taking it is 100 times more, you can't do anything. But the problem is the people who don't get it, and then somehow they feel it's, you internalize the fault. It's not. You didn't do well on one exam, and I think that's it. You didn't do well on one exam. Move on. And the other thing is when you fast forward 5-10 years and you're past your education, you're in a job, you're happy, at some point you're going to be comfortable with what you're doing. And you look around the people who are with you in a similar role, in a similar profession, they're not from IITs, right? Maybe there are some, maybe there aren't. Life sort of equalizes and it really doesn't matter. And as long as what we think the keywords we've been sort of sticking through is there's a passion, there's a drive, there is curiosity, there's interest in what you're doing, yeah, it will work itself out. And I think putting too much emphasis on these aspects might actually take away from the bigger goal that you're trying to achieve, rather than, I don't know. And in fact, most of the people, the most common question we get of people who get into IIT, first semester students, right? They've just studied, written IITs, accepted. What do I need to do to get an MBA? I said, what? I don't know. You're an engineering degree. I do not know if I'm trying to help you get an MBA degree, then that's not really why this program exists. But yeah, people want IIT, IIM tags and all that stuff. I guess the only sad part is the number of engineers we actually put out who go into engineering jobs is low. That number needs to go up, and I know that's a different topic from getting into IIT. But figured since we are touching on the topic, I just talk about it. But yeah, largely I agree with what you said.
So it's a very important point that Bharat brought out, which is there has to be something intrinsic to you that brings you to IIT. This passion or interest is very important, because in my batch there were people in computer science, they have got ranks in the top 20, top 30, but then they have done this because they've been told to do it, and then they ask, now what? Then there is somebody else who has also got rank 20, 30, but he has taken some other branch that is not really popular or conventional for that rank. He is very clear about why he has landed up here, and he is somehow, there is a reason, he is driven by wanting to learn aerospace engineering or something specific to chemical engineering or some such aspect. So you need to have that well-founded reason for why you want to land up in an IIT. So before you even think about what do I have to do to get into IIT. And two, I would be a little more harsh, like you said, yeah, those people who do not clear that exam, for them to even get an inkling of feeling that somehow they have failed is complete rubbish. That's something that the society or we have to work hard towards convincing everyone that not getting into an IIT is not a failure. If you still have passion and interest going, and by then you would have identified what your strengths are, there are still enough opportunities out there.
So yeah, I'll end it. So thanks so much for coming on to the show. This is Steam Theatre episode 4. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Instagram. Thank you, viewers, so much.